Hi class. In this second part of the lesson, we're going to talk about routes to persuasion, or how it is you can persuade people to take on a particular attitude. The first is systematic or central route processing. This is where you use the message content presented in a logical, strong, or rational manner to persuade the person to take on a particular attitude. So with systematic processing, you use facts, you use arguments, and you use logic to try to get the person to see things your way. I have here an ad that is an example of systematic processing. It's for a particular kind of scanner, and it talks about the software of the scanner. It gives testimonials from magazines or places and corporations that have used it. It gives facts and figures about the price of the product and features the product in the ad. They're attempting to persuade you by convincing you factually that they have the best product. The second kind of persuasion is heuristic persuasion, or peripheral route. This uses emotion to try to persuade people. It might make you laugh or cry or think, but basically it uses your emotions to get you to attach them to the message and to then change your mind about things or to persuade you about things. I have an example of a commercial that uses heuristic processing that I'm going to play for you. The commercial is a Bud Light commercial.
Dance with me.
No thanks.
I really want to dance with you.
Not now.
Come on.
No thanks.
Get up and dance with me.
Maybe later.
Come on.
No.
For the great taste that won't fill you up and never lets you down, make it a Bud Light.
So in this case, heuristic or peripheral route processing is being used. They're trying to make you laugh and associate humor with the Bud Light product. Which one is better to use? Well, it depends. If the message is important and the audience has a high processing capacity, then systematic processing might be the way to go. However, if the message is not particularly important, what beer to drink isn't really going to save the world, and say you're at a game, a Yankees game, and people's processing capacity is low, they're really there to have fun, peripheral route might be the better way to go, since the audience is not really going to be paying close attention to your message, and they won't necessarily perceive it as super important. In terms of persuasion, the second thing that matters is the characteristics of the communicator. Certain things about the communicator make a message more persuasive than it would be if delivered otherwise. The first thing is credibility. I have here an ad by Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, asking men to go and get a PSA test. It's a test that detects prostate cancer early. Rudy Giuliani is also a cancer survivor. For men who are middle-aged and might be more likely to develop prostate cancer, and from a cancer survivor, he might be seen as a credible person to talk about this topic, and therefore might persuade men to go out and get the test, more so than another type of communicator. In addition, physical appearance is another thing that can be persuasive. So in this case, they use a highly attractive male model to feature and advertise for this particular watch. It actually doesn't say very much about the watch, and the amount of space used for the physically attractive model is actually much greater than the product. But physical appearance does tend to catch our eye, and in that case, it then does tend to persuade us a little bit more. Not designed to change our attitudes. When a person starts off by saying, "I'm not here to change your attitude or to make you think differently, just hear me out," we are often more persuaded by that type of appeal. So if we perceive the persuader as someone who isn't necessarily only setting out to change our attitudes, we often find them slightly more trustworthy, and in fact, they then have a greater degree of persuasive ability. The fourth thing is likability. Likability is when they use, say, stars or people who are actors or actresses or who have a good reputation and associate it with the product, hoping that that person's reputation will then be sort of rubbed off on the product and make you more likely to want to buy the product. In this case, it's an ad with Naomi Campbell and Larry King. Larry King had a very, very popular show, a late night talk show, and he's generally well regarded and well respected in media circles. He is someone who generally has a likable profile. I think the ad is interesting because it's the sort of juxtaposition with Naomi Campbell, who once had a very likable profile, but threw a few too many cell phones at staff and then found her profile had sort of plummeted. This is the downside of likability too. When a star is no longer found to be likable, often the endorsements dry up. So you can think of a lot of sports stars that have had mishaps, and the endorsements that they once had are no longer there, are taken away, because they don't have the likability to offer the person with the product to persuade people anymore. And lastly, similarity. When we perceive people to be a lot like ourselves, we tend to heed their advice. So a person who is trying to persuade us, who is perceived as in a similar situation or has a similar understanding, will often be more persuasive than someone who is not. This ad was featured in a business magazine, and it's saying, all the good reasons why you should pick up a Visa for Business card. Basically featuring two people who are small businessmen and giving sort of their story and how the card is useful and matters for their business. In this case, the advertisers are banking on people who are picking up the business magazine feeling that these people have a similar story to them, and therefore they will be more persuaded by it. Third and lastly, the channel of communication can matter a lot in terms of whether we are persuaded. Not all persuasion is the same. When it comes to persuasion, we are most persuaded by our live contact with people. Being at a rally, talking with a politician, being lectured to in a class, all of these things are the most persuasive. The next is videotaped. Things that are on TV, videos that you watch on the internet, and other things that, are DVDs or things that are basically video. The next most persuasive thing is audio taped, or things that you might hear on the radio or pre-recorded as podcasts or things like that. And the least persuasive is actually written messages, because written messages can often be complex. So the most persuasive form of communication is live, and it goes all the way down to written. However, there is a caveat in that if you have a very complex message, something that you have to get across to people that contains a lot of information or facts or figures, often the best method to do that is writing. Because with writing, you can sit, read, think about, make notes, process, and take your time. If you've ever seen, say, something that was a TV show or a video that tried to put in too many complex ideas at once, it was hard to follow. So often things that are more complex are better comprehended when they're written. And often you'll see people do more than one thing. So a politician might appear on the news in sort of that 20-second clip talking about their platform and what it is they intend to do if elected. But they might follow up with more lengthy and more factual written messages mailed out to potential voters. So they might sort of mix and match a little bit, knowing that for those who are interested and really want to find out about what the politician's platform is, they'll take the time to read that message and therefore might be more persuaded. But what ends up happening is that there is a two-step flow of communication between live people and the media. And this is how the media can end up being so persuasive. So often you might see something, say on TV or on the internet or on one of the news sites, and then you go into work or to school or somewhere and everybody's talking about it. So you further discuss aspects of whatever the event is and influence each other. So sometimes things that are in the media, which would maybe be slightly less persuasive than live communication, can become even more persuasive as people begin to talk about those events with family and friends and neighbors or just people at work, and then begin to influence each other in a live fashion. So that which was once videotaped can actually become, through a two-step flow of communication, a source of live persuasion.